My dad said, "Get out and never come back" at Christmas dinner. He didn't know I'm a self-made billionaire. 3 weeks later he found out when his boss introduced me as the new owner, firing him. Your one click helps more than you know. Subscribe and drop a comment saying where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story goes. I still remember the weight of the fork in my hand when my father's voice cut through the Christmas dinner chatter like a blade. Get out. Get out and never come back. The cranberry sauce I'd been reaching for suddenly felt irrelevant. My stepmother Diane smirked from across the table, her diamond bracelet catching the candlelight. She'd been whispering in his ear for the past hour while I tried to enjoy the meal I'd driven 6 hours to attend. "Dad, what are you talking about?" My voice cracked despite my attempt to sound calm. I was 28 years old, a successful entrepreneur, and I was being dismissed like a disobedient child. "You heard me, Felicia. You think you're better than this family with your fancy tech company talk. You didn't even bring a decent gift." He gestured at the cashmere scarf I'd carefully selected for him, still wrapped under the tree. "Your brother Fred brought us a cruise package." Fred, Diane's biological son, leaned back in his chair with that familiar satisfied grin. He worked as Dad's assistant manager at Morrison Manufacturing, the company where Dad had spent 30 years climbing to regional director. Fred had been there 2 years and acted like he owned the place. "I built a company from nothing," I said quietly, feeling my hands tremble. "I came here because family matters to me." "Family?" Dad laughed bitterly. "You abandoned this family when you moved to Silicon Valley chasing pipe dreams. Now leave before I throw you out myself." The December air bit at my face as I walked to my car, carrying the overnight bag I'd packed with such hope. Through the dining room window, I could see them laughing, already filling my empty chair with presents. Diane raised her wine glass in what looked like a toast. My father's face, once warm when my mother was alive, had become a stranger's. I'd called my best friend Belinda before leaving the driveway. "He really did it," I whispered, throat tight. "He chose her over me. Just come to my place. Don't drive upset." Her voice was steady, anchoring me. "I need to be alone." That was a lie. I needed to scream, to cry, to shatter something. Instead, I drove through the snowy Pennsylvania night toward my Philadelphia apartment, replaying every moment. My mother died 5 years ago from breast cancer. She'd been my champion, the one who encouraged me to study computer science when Dad scoffed. "Let her try," she'd said firmly. "Our daughter's brilliant." After she passed, Dad changed. Or maybe Diane just revealed what was always there. The engagement happened 8 months after Mom's funeral. Diane swept in with her predatory smile and divorced status, targeting my grieving father like a heat-seeking missile. She brought Fred, her 26-year-old son who'd failed at 3 startups and blamed everyone but himself. Within a year they were married. Within 2 I was the outsider. Sitting in my apartment staring at the city lights, I remembered the exact moment I knew I'd lost my father. It was Mom's birthday 2 years after she died. I'd flown in from California with her favorite orchids and found Diane redecorating Mom's garden. "Dad, those were Mom's rose bushes," I'd protested, watching workers rip them out. "Diane wants a modern aesthetic," he'd replied without looking up from his newspaper. "Your mother's gone, Felicia. Time to move forward." "Moving forward doesn't mean erasing her." His eyes had flashed with something cold. "You don't get to tell me how to grieve. You left. You chose California over family." That wasn't true. I'd left because my startup Technova Solutions needed me at headquarters. But I called weekly. I visited quarterly. I tried. God, I tried so hard to maintain connection with a man who'd already replaced me in his heart with a woman and her manipulative son. Now, unwrapping the scarf I'd bought Dad, I noticed my phone buzzing. Fred had posted on social media, "Family Christmas complete," Some people just don't fit in anymore. The photo showed them gathered around the tree, my empty chair visible in the frame like a missing tooth. Belinda's text came through, block him. Block them all. I didn't. I needed to remember this feeling. This fury. This pain. Most people didn't know that Technova Solutions, the company I founded at 23 with my college roommate Derek Wright, was now valued at $4.2 billion. We developed an AI-powered logistics platform that revolutionized supply chain management. Our clients included Fortune 500 companies, government contractors, and international manufacturers. I owned 62% of company shares. Derek owned 30%. The remaining 8% belonged to early investors. On paper, I was worth approximately $2.6 billion. In reality, I lived modestly, reinvesting profits focused on growth rather than flashy displays of wealth. Derek called me the morning after Christmas. You okay? You sound off. Family stuff. I didn't elaborate. Derek knew my history, knew why I worked 16-hour days and poured myself into every project. Work didn't abandon you. Work didn't choose someone else's child over you. Listen, the Morrison Manufacturing acquisition is moving forward. Their board accepted our offer. We're meeting with senior leadership next month to discuss transition plans. Derek's voice carried excitement. This is our biggest manufacturing client yet. Vertical integration, complete supply chain control. Morrison Manufacturing. My father's company. The place he'd devoted 3 decades. The words hit me like ice water. Derek, what did you just say? Morrison Manufacturing? The Pennsylvania-based industrial manufacturer? We've been negotiating for 3 months. My hands went numb. I'd been so buried in Technova's expansion that I'd missed this detail. Our acquisitions team handled dozens of potential purchases quarterly. Morrison Manufacturing had appeared on my approval list as mid-size Pennsylvania manufacturer, strategic asset for vertical integration. I'd signed off without reading deeply, trusting my team's assessment. Now I pulled up the files. Morrison Manufacturing, headquartered in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Regional Director, Wayne Hayes. My father. Wayne Hayes, who'd worked there since I was 2 years old. Wayne Hayes, who'd mentioned over previous Christmas dinners how the company was struggling with outdated systems and mounting debt. My heart hammered as I scrolled through organizational charts. There was Fred too, listed as Assistant Regional Director. A title that seemed inflated for someone with his limited experience. Derek, I said carefully, I need to be personally involved in the Morrison transition. You want to handle a mid-size acquisition personally? Jazz, we've got executives for that. Trust me on this one. I'll explain later. My voice must have carried something because Derek didn't argue. I spent the next week reviewing every document. Morrison Manufacturing was hemorrhaging money due to poor management decisions, outdated equipment, and bloated administrative costs. The regional office, my father's domain, was particularly inefficient. Fred had apparently convinced Dad to invest in a failed software system that cost the company $2 million. 3 weeks after Christmas, I stood in Technova's San Francisco headquarters, looking at my reflection in the glass wall. I wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than my father's monthly salary, my natural hair styled in elegant locks that fell past my shoulders. My assistant Maya had scheduled the Morrison Manufacturing leadership meeting for January 18th. They don't know you're the owner? Maya asked, reviewing the itinerary. They know Technova acquired them. They don't know I founded Technova. It wasn't unusual. I'd kept a relatively low profile, especially on the East Coast. Tech publications knew me, but manufacturing trade journals? Unlikely. Belinda called that evening. You're really doing this? He told me to never come back. I'm not coming back as his daughter. I'm coming back as his boss. The words tasted like vindication and poison simultaneously. And then what? You fire him and feel better. I didn't have an answer. Revenge fantasies had kept me warm through cold nights, but now facing the reality I felt something else. Not quite regret. Maybe uncertainty. No, determination mixed with grief. My therapist, Dr. Lorraine Mitchell, had warned me about this. Felicia, confronting your father from a position of power might feel satisfying momentarily, but it won't heal the wound. That requires conversation, vulnerability. What if he doesn't deserve my vulnerability? I'd asked. Then you walk away whole, not wounded. But revenge leaves scars on both people. I'd stopped seeing her after that session. Morrison Manufacturing's headquarters sat in an industrial park outside Lancaster, a sprawling complex of warehouses and offices. I arrived with Derek and our CFO Marion Washington in a black Mercedes. The January cold bit through my coat as we walked toward the main building. "You're sure about this?" Derek whispered. He'd figured out the connection when I'd explained my history the previous night. Completely. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman named Betty who'd been there since I was a child, looked up with professional courtesy. Her eyes widened slightly. Did she recognize me? But she simply smiled. "Technova representatives? Mr. Hayes is expecting you in the executive conference room." Walking those hallways felt surreal. I'd visited this building dozens of times growing up, bringing Dad forgotten lunches, attending Bring Your Daughter to Work days when Mom was still alive. The walls were the same industrial beige. The coffee still smelled burnt. The conference room held 12 people. My father sat at the head of the table, looking older than I remembered, his hair grayer. Fred sat beside him, typing on his phone with an air of bored entitlement. Other executives I didn't recognize filled the remaining seats. Dad stood. "Welcome to Morrison Manufacturing. I'm Wayne Hayes, Regional Director. This is my son Fred, Assistant Regional Director." Son. Not stepson. Just son. "Thank you for the warm welcome," Derek said smoothly, shaking hands. "I'm Derek Wright, CFO of Technova Solutions. This is Marion Washington, our Chief Financial Officer, and this," he gestured toward me with barely concealed satisfaction, "is Felicia Hayes, founder and CEO of Technova Solutions." The room went silent. I watched my father's face drain of color, his hand frozen mid-handshake with Marion. Fred's phone clattered onto the table. "Felicia." Dad's voice cracked. His eyes darted from me to Derek, searching for confirmation that this was real. "Hello, Dad." I kept my voice professional, cold. "Perhaps we should begin the transition meeting? I know everyone's time is valuable." "You're the owner?" Fred sputtered, his face reddening. "You're the CEO?" "Founded the company 5 years ago. We specialize in AI-powered logistics and supply chain optimization. Morrison Manufacturing's acquisition represents a strategic vertical integration opportunity." I clicked through the presentation on the screen. "Which brings us to the restructuring plan." My father sank into his chair, looking like he'd been struck. An older executive, Theodore Ted Morrison, the grandson of the company founder, leaned forward with interest. "Ms. Hayes, your reputation precedes you. Technova's innovations are impressive." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I appreciate your confidence in our vision." I advanced the slide. However, our analysis revealed significant operational inefficiencies, particularly in regional management. Dad's face went from white to red. "The regional office has shown consistent cost overruns and declining productivity metrics," I continued, displaying the data. Each graph was an indictment of my father's leadership. Additionally, there was an unauthorized $2 million expenditure on a software system that failed implementation. Who approved that purchase? Silence. Then Fred cleared his throat. That was a strategic investment. The vendor had excellent references. The vendor was your former college roommate, Fred. Marion's voice was sharp as she distributed printed documentation. Who operated a shell company and disappeared with the funds. We've already filed criminal charges. Fred went pale. Dad closed his eyes, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Wait, Ted Morrison interrupted, looking between us. Wayne, is this woman your daughter? The one you mentioned transferred to California. Disowned, actually, I said quietly. 3 weeks ago at Christmas dinner, my father told me to get out and never come back, because I wasn't family enough, because I didn't bring an expensive enough gift, because his wife and her son had successfully replaced me in his life. The room erupted in murmurs. Dad's hands shook on the table. So let me be clear about the restructuring, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The regional director position is being eliminated. Fred Hayes is terminated immediately for fraud and embezzlement. Security will escort you both from the building within the hour. Felicia, please, Dad's voice broke. It's Miss Hayes now. You can't do this. Fred shot to his feet, his chair crashing backward. You're doing this because of some family drama? That's not professional. Sit down, Derek said icily. Your employment termination has nothing to do with family and everything to do with embezzling $2 million. The only reason you're not in handcuffs right now is professional courtesy. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Felicia, I know I hurt you. I know I said terrible things. But destroying my career, destroying everything I've built. Everything you built? The words exploded from me, 3 weeks of pain channeled into razor-sharp clarity. You built this on Mom's memory, on the stability she provided while you worked long hours. You built this while I brought you coffee and believed you were a hero. Then she died and you erased her. You erased me. You chose a woman who saw dollar signs and a son who saw an easy ride. I was grieving, he whispered. So was I. I lost my mother and then I lost my father because you were too weak to see that Diane was manipulating you. She wanted your stability, your income, your position. And Fred wanted the easy executive track he couldn't earn himself. Diane's name hung in the air like poison. Ted Morrison cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should adjourn, Anne. No. I steadied myself, hands flat on the table. Everyone here needs to understand this decision is based on performance data, not personal vendetta. The numbers speak for themselves. Ted Morrison surprised me by speaking up. Wayne, I've been concerned about regional performance for 2 years. The board's been pressuring me about those numbers. He looked at me with something like respect. Miss Hayes, what's your retention plan for other staff? Everyone except Fred and Wayne Hayes will be offered continued employment with improved benefits. We're investing $15 million in equipment upgrades and training programs. Morrison Manufacturing will be profitable within 18 months. I clicked to the next slide showing projected growth. Your grandfather's legacy will be secured, Mr. Morrison, but it requires new leadership. Who becomes regional director? Someone asked. Marion Washington will serve as interim director while we hire externally. We're looking for someone with manufacturing experience and modern management training. I looked at my father. Someone who can lead without nepotism or emotional compromise. Dad stood abruptly, his chair scraping. You want me to beg? Fine. I'm begging. I was wrong at Christmas. I was cruel. I let Diane poison me against you. Is this what you want to hear? I wanted to hear it 3 weeks ago when you threw me out of my childhood home on Christmas. I wanted to hear it when you erased Mom's garden. I wanted to hear it every time you chose Fred over me for 2 years. My voice remained steady, but tears burned behind my eyes. Now it's too late for begging. Because you're rich and powerful now? Because you can destroy me? No, Dad. Because I finally realized I don't need your approval anymore. Security escorted Fred from the building within 30 minutes. He screamed threats about lawsuits and called me a vindictive bitch, loud enough that Betty the receptionist flinched. Marion calmly recorded everything on her phone for the inevitable legal proceedings. My father moved slower, packing his office with quiet dignity. I found him there standing over a photo of Mom, his hands trembling. She'd be disappointed in both of us, he said without turning around. She'd be disappointed in you, I corrected. I built something. I created jobs, innovation, value. You just maintained the status quo until you couldn't even do that. He turned, and for a moment I saw the father I remembered. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who attended every science fair, who cried at my college graduation. I loved your mother with everything I had. When she died, I broke. Diane was just there. She made me feel less alone. I was there too, Dad. Your daughter. But I reminded you of Mom, didn't I? Same eyes, same ambitions, same voice. Easier to push me away than face your grief. His silence confirmed everything. I called every week, I continued, my voice cracking despite my control. I tried to maintain our relationship across 3,000 miles. But you made it clear that unless I stayed, unless I sacrificed my dreams to sit in your living room, I wasn't worth keeping. I was wrong. He finally met my eyes. I was so wrong, Jazz. Please. But that nickname, the one Mom used, only made me angrier. 3 months later, Technova's integration of Morrison manufacturing was complete. Productivity increased 23%. Employee satisfaction scores rose. The company was profitable again, and Ted Morrison publicly praised our management strategy in industry publications. I stood in my San Francisco office, overlooking the bay, when Belinda called. Did you see? Your dad's working at a packaging plant in Harrisburg. Entry-level management. I know. I'd been tracking him through industry contacts, unable to fully let go. He'd also filed for divorce from Diane once he realized she'd been draining his accounts. Fred faced criminal charges and had moved back in with his mother. Do you feel better? Belinda asked gently. I feel resolved. That was the honest answer. Not happy. Not vindicated. Just resolved. I proved I didn't need him. I proved I could succeed despite him. And now I keep building. Mom always said success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. I looked at her photo on my desk, her smile forever frozen in time. I proved I was right to follow my dreams. That's enough. Dr. Mitchell had been right about one thing. Revenge didn't heal wounds. But boundaries did. Consequences did. Standing firm in my own worth did. My father had sent 12 letters to Technova headquarters. I'd read none of them. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday I'd even respond. But today I had a company to run, innovations to develop, and a legacy to build that had nothing to do with the man who told me to leave and never come back. He didn't get to witness my success. That was the real consequence. Not his job loss, but his permanent exclusion from my life's greatest achievements. And I was finally, genuinely okay with that.